Hey guys, tonight you're stepping into the gaslit streets of Victorian Paris. The air smells of coal smoke and fresh bread. You pass a woman leaning in a doorway, her gown just a little too bright for daytime, her smile a little too still. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. This is the world you're walking into, sad place, where pleasure is sold by the hour, but survival costs far more between the police, the poverty, and the layers of velvet deception. Even the most resourceful among us would find it hard to make it a week. You are in Paris. Not the Instagrammable one with macarons and Eiffel Tower picnics. No, this is 1863. Napoleon Marcelli is still ember. Baron Haussmann is halfway through bulldozing medieval alleyways to create those wide, impressive boulevards. And yet, despite all the new stone and steel, much of Paris still runs on what hides behind the facades: sex, gossip, debt, and the delicate art of pretend the city gleams. But only on the surface by day, respectable ladies with gloved hands shop along the grand arcades. By night, those same streets hum with different footsteps, perhaps some hesitant, some practiced, all seeking something unspeakable. You've arrived in the middle of it, and you're not here as a tour. You're here to live it, to feel the weight of a corset tightening your ribs, to notice how the gaslights flicker when you pass, making your shadow stretch longer than your bod, to understand what it truly meant to be a prostitute in Victorian Paris. Not the glamour, not the scandal, but the tiny, everyday things that made up a life lived quietly in defiance of respectability. You walk past a theatre. There's a woman in full makeup rehearsing her laughter. Too bright? Too McCandy. She's not on the stage, not yet, but she performing all the same. Historians don't argue whether the blurred line between entertainer and sex worker in this period was liberating, or simply a more palatable kind of bond you round a corner and arrive in Montmartre. Back then, it's less tourist trap, more working class chaos, artists, migrants, labourers, and a booming trade in women who work nights and sleep through sun's you. Past cafes filled with smoke and laughter, and then quieter courtyards filled with laundry lines and cats. Montmartre is where many of the filles publiques live, public girls. That. The polite term, never mind that. Few things about their lives are truly public, except their bodies, their records, and their reputation. You hear the clatter of wooden clogs on the stairs as one of them runs down from the top floor of a tenement. She's late again. You watch her hitch up her skirt and disappear into the street, not bothering with a shawl, not tonight, maybe it in warm out. Or maybe she just doesn't care if she catches cold. You take her place. Third floor, the wallpaper peels. Your bed is thin and smells faintly of lavender and pipe smoke. Therein, a chipped mirror on the wall and a single dress hanging from a nail. This is home for nay, and tomorrow you go to the cafe again. Hope the man from last week shows up. The one who said he liked your laugh. Not that your laugh is real, but he doesn't need to know that right now. You sit at your window. The gaslight outside buzzes soft. You look down at the city and wonder how many others are doing the same. You catch a glimpse of a woman being ushered into a carriage across the street, not escorted. Escort you should there, a disbrut is better dressed than you. Maybe she works in a maison clothesmart. She probably has her own room, cleaner sheets, maybe even a working he you envy her a lit. But you Perdstort how some of those houses are really just gilded prisons, with velvet gilded prisons. How madams can be more exacting than any clod, and how the price of comfort is often total submed. Your feet are sore, your stomach ache, mostly anx. Dinner was a slice of cheese, a crust of bread, and 2 spoonfuls of old soup from the corner vendor, who thinks you're sweet, pays 60, half blind, and calls you little dove. You don't correct him. Sometimes kindness is currency, and Paris, for all its charms, runs on cold, hard cauldron. Even the nuns say so there. A church down the street they run, a home for bit-fallen women. You pass it sometimes late at night inside. Girls your age kneel in prayer, wear shapeless dresses and scrub floors until their hands bliss. The nuns call it salvation. You call it another kind of cell. Still, if things ever get too bad, you close your eyes outside, A distant accordion plays not beautifully, but earnestly a slow tune with pauses and warbles, like the musician keeps forgetting the next no. It suits the moan. You wonder, idly, if the city ever really sleeps. And you wonder how many others lie awake tonight, not with insomnia, but with hunger, worry, or antizin. Paris is full of seat, but yours is sin. You're tired, you're young to survive. And tonight, just like every night, you do what you must. You'll paint your lists. You count your coins in the dark and hope they'm enough. And tomorrow you'll do it all again, because this city doesn't care if you wear. It only cares if you abuse still. Beneath all that, beneath the powdered face, the practiced gestures, the careful flirtations, there is a small sharp core of you that refuses to give in completely. Itching the part of you that still laughs for real someday, the part that remembers your mother and lullabies, the part that does not believe in happy endings, but still believes in getting through the night and tonight. As the city sighs and flickers, you do just that. The sun rises late in Montmartre, especially for girls like you. When it finally does, it seeps in sluggishly through the thin curtains, casting long slashes of light across your dusty floorboard. You're already awake, you never really slept. Not full. There were footsteps on the stairs around midnight, a drunk voice arguing with the door around 2. You sit up slowly, bones creaking like the old bed frame, and swing your feet to the ground. The boards coat you. You pull your shawl around your shoulders, squint at your reflection, and make the first of 100 small decisions that will carry you through another day. Today, you're heading to the Rue des Martyrs, not to pray, but to find work. More specifically, to find who might want your company tonight. This is where the girls of Montmartre congregate in Daisy. Cafes corners, dressmakers' windows. They lean, they chat, they wait. There is a certain rhythm to it, unspoken, but understood, like birds on a wire. Each woman spaced just so, making sure not to intrude on another patch even among the desperate. Etiquette has its place. You pass. 2 girls sitting outside a tobacco shop. One's painting her nails with red wine. 2 took her boot. Not both, just one. You don't ask questions. You keep what? The city is slowly coming alive. Delivery boys yell over their cards. A priest hurries past with his collar twisted and his conscience probably tainted. And up ahead, there it is. Your place, a small cafe with peeling paint and tables, just uneven enough to make every coffee spill a lee, but the view is goo from here. And be what, because this is the part they never say aloud. Most clients don't walk into brothels. They find you here lingering in Café Rose, reading a book you've never actually finished, pretending to wait for someone who'd never arrived, all watching for that subtle glance, that flicker of curiosity, that means someone might be looking for more than catty. Historians still argue whether these crazy girls were formerly part of the sex trade, or just hovering near its egg. But you know bet, you were in it. You're just not lucky enough to be a fee, and, in Paris, being unofficial means everything is harder. You don't get protects, you don't get protects, you don't get privy, you don't get privy, you don't even get a regular bed. Half the time, but you do get free sorters. You sip your coffee slow-itted. Bijou 2 hots, 2 hots. It first now 2 coffee. Very, a man walking with a cane, tapping out a rhythm that seems a little too a soldier on leave, may. Then an older gentleman, hack-tipped low eyes, scanning faces, searching for something. You look away just before he notices you. Not him, not today, maybe later. If no one better come than a flicker. Clean hand. He pretending to read the menu, but his eyes keep darting back to the street. He know this tight student probably first time. Or second he walks by. One then again, then finally approach. Sits 2 tables away. You wait there in a rhythm to this, too. He orders something. He glance over you. You'd offer a soft smile, maybe brush your collarbone with a fingertip. That's all it takes, because men like him are already halfway down the road. They just need someone to open the door. Maybe a compliment, maybe a question about the weather. You reply. Gently. Your voice is low, melody, a little tired, a little amused. He asks if he can join you. Of course, you say, as if the thought had never crossed your mind. You talk about enough, the street, the weather, a book you haven't read. He fidgets. Finally, the real quest. Would you like to go somewhere quieter? Yes, you say, but not yet. Not until he finishes his drink. not until the waiter looks away, not until you tuck the few coins under your cup. With a practiced mo, you rise to co, you oyster co, you ward a cast away. This is how it goes most days, and while it lacks the structure of a registered maison, it offers something ager. Flexible autonomy and just a hint of Dane. Some girls prefer brothels. They like the routine, the madame to manage the books, the regular disinfens, but even then brothels come in layers. There are the high-end maison de tolerance, where the curtains are silk and the wine is Dijon, and then there are the maisons de cabotage, literally slaughterhouse, no curty, no bez, just lines of girls and clients with tight wallets and loose amours. You've been in Beaussy. But you do remember the first time you stepped into a maison clos, the velvet warby, the chandelier with half its bulbs burnt out, the madam who looked like she'd once been beautiful and still had forgiven time for taking it. She dyed you up and down. Pretty enough, she said, but you'll need to smile more. Didn't realize that the smile would eventually stiffen into something. You'd forget how to drop inside. The girls moved like dancers in a slow, endless ballet. One fetching wine, one adjusting her garter just so. One whispering to a man with a paunch and a pocket what. It was all artifice, but it worked. Men liked to believe the fantasy, that they were want, that this was special, that they were somehow different, and you, like every other girl, learned quickly how to feed that illusion. You learned the right laugh, the pause before a compliment, the way to tilt your head just slightly when saying his name. It'd exhort, but it'd also lucrative. Some nights you leave with enough coins to pay your rent and afford a little meat with your stew. Other nights, not so much. Still, it'd better than being out in the cold, because Paris is not kind to women who fall too far. There are the clochard street women who sleep under bridges, curl into alleys, and are lucky if they make it to spring. Pork fat. You pass them before, covered in rags faces, leathery from wind and wine. You look away every time, not out of crew but fee new and then, one miss pay. Still working, still playing the game, and if you're clever and lucky, you'll last another scene, and maybe one day, you will be the Médaille, the one with the ring of keys and the lair, the one who never smiles, because she does not have to. You finish your coiffeuse, to slide the coins under the cup, and step into the street again. Time to find someone new, or let someone find you, either way. The day rolls on and Paris doesn't away. Not for you, not for anyone. You barely made it back to your room when the knock comes. Not loud, not just expect you open the door and see Marie, cheeks flushed, apron askew, breathless from stairs, and you the police are making rounds again. She says, eyes darting to your win, you sigh. Not again. They've been sniffing around all week, checking documents, muttering about bit and cleaning up the streets, which is ironic, considering most of them use those same streets by night. You reach under the mattress and pull out your book, the little leather-bound ledger they issued when you were officially registered. It had creased, barely legible in parts, and at the moment, expired. Because of course it is you were short. 3 francs at the last fit, and now technically you're in VI, which means technically real try. Parisian authorities took prostitution off the street, at least on paper, and tried to shove it into the red-lit walls of Reggae. Brothels were legal. Women were legal. But only if they checked in regularly with doctors, obeyed curfews, and carried their bivret sanitaire. You tuck yours inside your bodice and nod at Marie. If they knock, you're asleep or sick, or gone, depending on who are. She nods back and disappears down the hall. And try not to think about the last time a girl was dragged in for not having her booklet up to date. You remember her name, Celeste. Young, barely 15, hair the colour of chestnuts in spring, they said. She'd refused the medical exams, said she ran, said when they found her. She'd bitten an officer. You're not sure how much of it was true, but you never saw her again. The M. Saint-Pétri. They wither, Saint-Pétri. They women too, defiant or inconvenient, were sent to vanish beneath corsets and cold wars. Historians still debate how many of the women housed there were actually mentally ill. You adjust your shawl, the room feels cold aside. Outside the city carries on. Vendors yell over carts of oranges. Children run, shrieking with laugh somewhere. A dog barred and you get res, because tonight you're heading to a maze, not your usual hond. You got the tip from Elise Pacal you knew back when you both washed linens for rich women who called you pet, Elise moved up fat. Met a client who paid for her teeth to be fixed now. She working at Madame Riviere, one of those houses with real chandeliers and actual soap in the washroom. You tie your corset tighter. The dress is borrowed, too tight in the hips and slightly stained under one sleeve, but the neckline is perfect, low enough to suggest high enough to withhold you rouge your cheeks with beet juice, dust your décolletage with crushed chalk, and darken your lashes with soude. There is a certain thrill in the transipace from girl to femme, from tired to tantalizing. You descend the stairs careful. Out the door into the dust by the time you reach the maison. The lamps are lit, not gas, real oil lanterns that flicker like tiny jealous suns. The door opens before you knock, and there she is. Polite, she eyes you like a horse at auction. She says, turning your face gently with 2 fingers. Not bad. Can you dance, do? You lie? Yes, madam. She smiles faintly. Orfo, you want Nita tonight. They scholars. You blink, pardon? A party of schol, she repeats. Something about a lecture on the Roman Empire. Very dull. But they tick. Of course they do, they always do. You're ushered inside, past velvet drapes and heavy perfume. The house smells like roses and mildew and cheap brandy. Every scent is calcade, every lamp is it. This isn't a home, a stay. And tonight, you're part of the show. In the drawing room, other girls are already pone. One sprawled across a chaise, pretending to read Voltaire. Another perched near a piano, plunking out a tune, with just enough error to be endearing. And the men, old, moat, one young, all pretending they don't know why. They hear, all pretending they came for conversation. You move through the room like mist, smiling, touching a shoulder here, offering a laugh there eventually. You're seated next to one of them, Professor, he says from line in town for a lecture. On ancient mosaics. You nod. Feign entry, he talk because listening is the easiest work of the night. At one point he asks, if you know Lat, you reply, in a whisper, Bay carpe diem. He laughs. Of course he does. He never heard it said quite like that. You sip your wine too sweet, but it warms your throat and your nerves. Later, he asks if you do like to see his hotel room. You pause as if considering, then smile. Of course, prefer quartel, it always better when they think they lady you spend the night there. Not much happy, he too old, too drunk. He just wants to be paid that. Some clients want fire. As they want quie. A warm by, a hand, stroking their hair. A voice saying, be it all right even when it is. Some more you good at that, too good mate is. Leave before the chambermaid arouse. Outside the streets are still way. You pass a girl crying near a fowl. Another vomiting behind a car. And then you see something strange tacked. A pole revival, right rend. Tacked to a lamp off. Moral revival, save our sisters, lecture, and soup, free to all. The moralists are on the move again, handing out soup to girls they won't speak to by Dane, telling them they are ruined, filthy, bay, you're none of those then, if Ty says, and you hold your head higher than any reformer could stum, because in this city of gas and pretense you deal in something real flesh fiend, and the fragile dignity of survival. You are 8 years old when your mother stops brushing your hair. It is not out of cruelty, just that her fingers are swollen from washing other people in laundry, and you're old enough to start combing it yourself, you do. Most when you were men, sometimes with a fall, sometimes not at all. You don't think much of it at the time. How things slowly fall away when life narrows down to just getting through the day by 10. You're sweeping floors at a glove shop by 12. You're standing behind the counter pretending to know sizes and silks. The men tip you in peppermint drops. The women eye you with quiet judgment, like they can already guess where you'll end up. And by 15 you do end up there, or near it. It starts with a jaw. A cousin of a friend says there's work near the boulevard, clean, well-paying, indoors. It is only when you arrive that you realize indoors means dim corridors and bolted doors. You don't go back home after that. There is really a home to return to, and your mother. Your mother remarried, twice your brothers are gone, to more to prison or to nowhere in Petitia. You send a letter once, never hear back. Historians still argue whether most working class girls in Paris chose prostitution or were simply left with no other ops. You could argue it both ways. You did choose it, eventually, but only after every other door slammed shut. You sleep in a shared attic, at first with 3 other girls. The smell is mostly sweat and hope. One girl sings lullabies in Breton before bed. Another keeps a kitten in her coat. Even when she whirs, you all get by barely then. Your first relu that changes thin. His name is Jews, he sells fabric bore. Says he does. Always has ink stains on his calf. He buys you sweet wine and does not ask for much. Just come in a lap to rest his head. A voice to hum old ballads you feel say, until one night it does show. And the nay and the net some show, and the nake someone says he die. Someone else says he moved to knee, you never find out. You cry on this works. Affection is a rented room, you never own it. You never even hold the keys. Still, you remember the first time you made real man. Not pocket chain real man. It's a man from Bortho, thick moustache laughs too loud, smells of cheese and huff. He pays 3 times your usual rest slowly. It's unsettling but you buy a coat with the money, wool-lined green buy. You vote with the my, wool-lined green buy, you feel powerful for exactly 5 days, then it raise, you pawn the coat for insto. The first time they realize Bisa, survival isn't destination. Seeing a tread you keep moving or you fall off. There are days you consider quaying, becoming a maid, mayor or a seamstress, but maids get pinched, seamstresses go blind, and both earn half of what you do on a bad wee. You adjust, you learn, you start recognizing types before they speak. The fidgeters, the whispery, the men who call you Mademoiselle, like it, means something, and the ones who can't look you in the eye, you don't pity them much, because while they choosing shame, you're choosing bread. You pass a girl on the street and you barely fall in the street, and you barely 40, her shoes are too nice to you. Some move, some simply evaporate. Names swallowed by the city, like sugar cubes, in absinthe it in a quiet erasure. No grace, no farewells, just fewer voices at the wash basin. You sometimes wonder if you'll be one of the, but then your feet touch the street again, and the day calls you foreign. At least, not yet. You visit a friend, Claire, she older, wiser, keeps her hair short, and her windows oboe. She used to work the cabarets, back when they were still scandalous now. She mostly does read tar apartments. You sit at her table while she lays out the cars. A towel, a woman with a blindfold. She frowns not in worry, we just had. Then she smiles and says, "You'd live a long time." You ask if fatty, good or bad. She says no gar, just pours you tea. There ain't comfort in the ritty. A small domestic moment in a life built around the unprudent. Outside, the bells of St. Pierre toll the hour. You don't believe in saints but you like the sound you leave Clary, with 2 boiled eggs in your pocket and a card tucked in your sleeveless starg. You're not sure you believe in natty, but you keep it because sometimes the small things matter. A chine, a coat, a boiled egg in the cold. Not everything needs to be dramatic to be implored. You pass the boulangerie, the baker's son winks at you, not because you want him, but because it's nice to be seen without expect. Tonight maybe you'd go to the opera, not inside, just outside. Sometimes the wealthy drop coins if you look decorative enough, and if not, you'll listen to the echoes through the marfery, pretend you're the one on stage. Singing under chandeliers, applause like Rainey, but then you turn 12 and dreams got replaced with hunger. Still you hum sometime in the bath, in the stairwell, in the quiet hour just before night begins again, and maybe, just maybe, someone will hear you pussies. The dress doesn't fit again? You tug the bodice down, twist to the side and grunt softly as you yank at the back laces with a broken comb. One of the eyelets pops off with a sharp snap. You free, then side, add it to the lit. Your wardrobe, much like your patience, is wearing thin. You have 3 dresses. One for working, one for walking, and one for wishing. Things were best today. You wear the working dress. It smells like someone else in perfume, probably because it is someone else in dress. You bought it second-hand from a widow who was starting a new life in Rouen, and looked like she could cried into the hemline. The fabric is still good, but it itches always the same spot. Left shoulder, you scratch it and move on it. It early evening, and tonight you're heading toward the Boulevard de Clichy. The wind has that pre-storm energy. Dry, sharp, full of dust. Your hair won't behave. You pat it down with rose water and a prayer. The gaslights flicker. Everything feels a little too alive, and due to you're trying to look efforted, like your beauty woke up with you, like your lips just happened to match the ribbon in your hair, but everything is calter the rouge on your cheeks is mixed from beet pulp and burnt cork. The shine on your lips is goose fat, dabbed with a finger, you cleaned on your skirt, your eye lined with ash and spit it, in not gland with ash, like jus, but under the gaslight, you glow sort of. In the right eye to the right man. Historians sometimes claim that Victorian prostitutes were bought excessively pained, using arsenic-based powders and lead-laced creams. But most of you can't afford arsenic, you barely afford soot. You make do. The trick is to look expensive without being expense. To wear poverty like a disguise, not a confection. You pass a shop window and glance at your reflection. Pork fat, chin up shoulders, back smile, but not too much looks. Eager looks, desperate eager looks, desperate. Desperate is dang eager looks. Det perfect mystery, a little amuse. A little aloo, tonight she climbed. Is new, referred by Colette, who works near the theatre and always knows whom, in towel tall chic set quiet, watches more than he speaks, wears gloves even indoors. You intrigue hang staying at a hotel near the Moulin Rouge, not in it, of course, that would be too obscene, just adjacent. You arrive a little early and lean against the lamppost like you're resting, not waiting. A man with a baguette tips his hat. You nod polite, and then, there, he is, tall, quite, glite, glosen, Colette. Never lie. He doesn't speak at first, just gestures for you to walk with him. His coat smells like citrus and stars. Expensive star, he offers you a coin. Before you've said a word too far, you pocket it and offer a nay, a fake one tonight. You pocket it and offer a nay. Just the transaction and the allure you're good at Toulouse. He takes you to his room, top floor, thick car, a bathtub the size of a boat, top floor while he stands by the door and watches. It not the strangest request you've had. There was once a man who paid you to read aloud while he soaked his fee, another who wanted you to wear a clock around your neck and say, idiot time, every 10 mids, this is fine E. Watches it cross your legs slow, fold your hand, adjust your posture, pretend you're a pain. Eventually he thanks you softly, but drops another coin on the nightstand. You nod lee. No time sign, no tastem. Counting coins. You pass the alley where Margot got slapped last week. She was short on rent and tried to ask for credit from her. Madame, it go well. You have seen her sin. She be bass, madame. Why he never took them off. Not even to scratch his nose. Maybe he has a scar. Maybe he hiding soft hands too pale for a working man. Maybe he just doesn't want fingerprints on any vow. You never ask, you never will. You climb your stairs, kick off your boot, flop onto the bay. You're too tired to fight with the lace of the mattress groans beneath you like it. Judging your life choice, you ignore it, close your eye and dream. Not of love or freedom or wild escapes. No, tonight you dream of fad, silk-clean sieve. You wake up to sunlight, bleeding in through a crack in the shutters. The birds are louder than they should be. So is your neighbour chamber pot sloshing down the stairway. You lie still for a moment, tangled in sheets, corset halfway off, mouth dry from breathing through it all night. Your back aches. Your ribs feel like they've been laced into a question mark, and somewhere in your shoulder a tiny muscle twinges every time you move. You roll slowly to the edge of the bed. Your toes touch the cold floor. You try not to think too hard about the day ahead. Stale, tepid, faintly smelling of eye. You splash it on your face, a poor woman in Baptist. Then you're Mim in Baptist, then you're Mary. You squint into it, your hairy flattened on one side, sticking up on the other. You smooth it down with spit and fingertip, your lips are dry. But still you hammerly. A hammerlity, a happiless distract from the emptiness in your stomach. You eat a heel of bread left from Yesin. Then the stock them up, they have a run, of course they do. You tug them up anyway, tie them in place with ree. Then the dress same as yester's, because it always the same unless you adjust the bodice. Fold a scarf around your neck to hide the fraying collar and step out into the hall. The air smells like onion stew and perfume and the faint sour tang of shared lives. Your neighbour nods to you as she hauls her petticoats into a bun. She works morn laundry. Most you nod back say laundry. Most you nod back say nah. Carriage is clad, Paris is in full moda. Strapped to a cart, plays a waltz badly, but low at you. Which is used because neither do you. You're heading to Rue de la Lune today, not for work yeah, but for converser there. A woman there, Lucette, who keeps a kind of salon for girls like you. Not a fit, not fans, just a tiny room above a tobacconist where women sit and drink weak coffee and talk about clients. Disease tipsers for dealing with drunken dukes and men who cry after 10 minutes about who's safe and who is. Lucette is somewhere between a madame and a mother hen. She never worked the streets herself, claims she was able too delicate, but she knows every art too delicate, but she knows every tea. You find her perched on her window cushion. She gestures you in without looking up. Today dai talkie, preets apparently. 2 were seen entering Madame Blanchet last night, one after the other, not to gar, not speak, but both asking for quiet company. You all laugh, not cruelly, just no free. Because in Paris, sin and salvage walk the same streets. There ain't a girl there you hadn't seen before. Dark hair, quai, she says she came from line. You don't ask why, she left no one. Who pays in full, and who tries to pay in poti. One woman tells a story about a man who wanted her to wear his dead wifey a shoe. Another shares a trick for making a shilling look like 2 in the candlelight. Lucette says she heard rumours that the prefecture is planning another crackdown next week. Too many girls near the Opran. You're giving the rich indigestion. You all laugh again. But softer this time because it true, too visible. And you're profter this time because it true, too visible. And you're proften too invisible. And you're dead. The trick is to hover somewhere in the mid, not quite scandalous, not quite vergita, now hotter. You pull your shawl tighter and walk without hurrying. You think about last night, the man with the glove, and the one before that who cried when you kissed his Ford. You wonder where they are now, back in their parlours, back with their wives, or just back in high. You turn the corner and nearly run into a Klein, not a new one. A repeat here, start almost drops his high. He, with someone woman finely dressed with a parasol, he nods quickly, doesn't say your name, doesn't say an E, just keeps why. The woman eyes. You're not rudely, just curious. You're a secret even to people who know you, especially to them. By the time you get home, your feet are sore, you sit on the edge of your bed and take them out of your boots, one by one. Blisters are gay. Same gloves, same room. You get up, wash your face, pinch your cheek, tuck the scarf in neat. Tonight. You would ask a quest, not a big one, just something casual, maybe about me one, just something to make the room feel less like a theatre. You don't expect a real end, because sometimes the performance goes both ways. You leave the room, step into the dust to become Lucille again. She not real, but she what they want, and for now, that are enough. The streets smell like rain and horse manure. Paris has just been rinsed by an afternoon shower, the kind that clears the air but leaves everything slightly stale. The gutters are full of cigarette ends, wilted violets, and someone's missing glove. You step carefully over puddles, lifting your skirts just high enough to save the hem, but low enough to preserve mystery. That balance between grace and grit. What's your entire profile tonight? You're heading back to the quartier, where the masons are clustered like forgotten jewelry boss. Each one glows faintly from the inside. Each one keeps its doors open just enough to suggest welcome, not d'esprit. Or not on the scale, not exactly. But you've been told there's room for one more temporary work. I fill in for a girl who went away sudden. That town they say it so. Went away Sushton. Elise left no note. Her room was cleared the next day, her name scrubbed from the logbook. You wonder where she went. You wonder how much of it was her right or. Historians still argue whether the disappearance rate among Parisian prostitutes was abnormally high or simply well hid. You suspect it was both. The maison tonight is one you had it worked before. Madame Florenti, a narrow building with mauve curtains. You arrive just as the gas lamps sputter to lie inside. The wallpaper is the colour of spoiled peaches, and the air is thick with sandalwood. The madame greets you with a nod. No words, just a nod. She dressed like a widow but carries herself like Royu, or shown to a dressing room inside. 2 other girls, one mirror and a pile of perfume bottles missing their lays. You recognize one of the girl, Marguerite. She once slapped a banker for calling her Biddle, my little beast. He paid die. You nod to her. She grins. This place is dull, she whispers, but the tips are good if you pretend to be Polish. You don, that's why you just choose a scent? Vanilla, maybe, or clothes, hard to say, and prepare because the men arrive soon after, 3 of them all in suits that smell of mildew and ambers. One is balding, one is buildy, one is boaty. You take your cue, offer a smile, a seat, a bit of leg, accidental. Of course, you're paired with the young. He tells you his name is Amir. You doubt his name is Amir. You doubt it. It is he talks nervously. About opera, about horses. About his very respectable family in Balkow. You nod at all the right time, offer the occasional og, and really, he loosens slowly, like a tie pulled too tight all day. Eventually he asks if you do like a drink. You accenting they serving sherry tonight or something, pretending to be it burrs. You smile anyway. You notice how Emil fidgets with his cufflinks, how he blushes when you touch his knee, how he avoids the mirror in the corm. Most he avoids the mirror in the corm, most do their something about seeing themselves mid-fantasy that spoils the spay. You rise, Clayton, I am bed. The room is Clayton's, I am bed. You help him with his coat. He asks if you can take the lead, you nosks if you can take the lead, you nod, this is new. Some men want to be comped, others want to be figure. He lies back you begin nuss back, you begin nothing, to feel wanted, even not always about love. You hum a little, softly, something wordly, he exhales, like he's been holding his breath since Bert. Later, as you dress, he presses a banknote into your palm, more than you expect. You thank him. He says nothing, just watches you go back downstairs. The madame nods again. You hand her share. Slip it into your store. You leave the house quiet. The air outside is cool, and quieter than it should be. You walk past the other masons, each one glowing faintly, each one full of girls like you, painted, powdered, pratt. You pause at a corner where a police patrol usually loiters. No one tonight. Strain, you keep walking. Eventually, you reach the bridge. Therein, a girl, there young trembling. You recognize the Lou. She considering it. Not the word, the what, she considering it. Not the word, you walk the war. The war think it did all too much. You nod, of course. She looks at you, eyes glassy. Up between, you keep going. You shrow. I keep breathing, that a start. She lost a cracked little sound. You offer her a cracked little sound. You offer her a crust from your coat pot. She accepts his small gesture, small kindness as some. Just to a street with more light before you part. She asks your name. You give her your real one. She smiles. You don't ask her, you let her keep that. The door creaks like it trying to goff. You slip in anyway. Careful not to let your boots click too loudly on the tie. It a later the kind of hour where Paris forgets, whether it dreaming or just drun. In your pocket, 5 francs and a lipstick cap in your mind. Sign that quiet emptiness that comes after pretending for owl. Tonight you work the salon at Madame Genie, a maison that thinks it an opera set gold, trim, velvet curtains, mirrors on every wall. You watched one man adjust his cravat for 10 minutes before he remembered. He come for compo, you gave him your for a while, and now you're home of what passes for hoe? Because that in the real Klein, not the men, the mun, the endless pursuit of just enough to pay Madaspine, enough to buy soap, enough to stay in the room instead of the street. From perfumed palaces to crumbling flats run by women who used to be girls like you. You know the types, the madames who wear too much rouge and call everyone one my little hen. They're not cruel, not always, but they keep the books tighter than a corset, and demand their cut without bling. The mood where you never argue, you simply nod and hand it over, because the alternative is no bed, no heat, no prepared, that the trade, safety for freed, and even that safety is rend. Then there are the maid, the quiet, steady ghosts who clean the linens. Most of them were once girls too. Now they work behind the scene. One of them, Camille, used to be known for her laugh. Once landed her a rich client who bought her shoes with real mother-of-pearl bus. Now she sweeps ash from the fireplace and hums to herself, the laughter dried up like old perfume. She gives you extra towels when she can. You always say thank you because small favors occur. the kind no one counts but everyone remember. And then there's the money itself, never an ox, always fleet, or a bottle of wine to help forget why you need the bread. In the first place you try to say, you always mean to, but there, always some, rent Dr. Vids. Boot repair, a friend who's sick and can make her share, then someone stole the jar. You never found out who, but you did ask Isa, because in this world suspicion is survival, and confrontation is just another kind of risk tonight. You count the coins again and a scrap of ribbon that you wore in your hair. You smile at the absurdity, but you don't throw it away because luck is luck, and you take it where you can find it across the hall. Someone coughs a dry hacking sound. My Ray, she been ill for week, want to go to the hosses. Says the beds are full, and the nurses are crew, she might be right. You bought her soup yesterday, she cried, not because of the soup, but because someone remembered she exit. You think about your own feud, what happens when you can't work, when your knees give out, when your smile goes stip. Some girls marry Klein. You imagine yourself running a little dress shop, selling ribbons and pin maybe, working the counter in peace, no rouge, no forced laughy, just measuring cloth, and folding but dreams are expanse, and your wallet is light. You don't breathe until they're gone. Sometimes it in aid, sometimes it to the land, sometimes it in a high, but in this life, nothing can be. Every insumptory, rub your arms with a cloth that smells like soap, and regret, then slip into your nightgown, cotton patched from ill. It's not soft, but it's yours. You lie down, let your head rest against a pillow that has seen too moan, and think briefly about worth. Taking up space in a world that often pretends you don't true. You are here, you survived another day, you made money, you helped my Ray, you avoided the betrayal, you smiled at a client who needed to believe you meant it. Because until something changes, and it might or it might not, this is your life. Not glamorous, not shame, just complicated, just you. And maybe, if the night stays quiet, then no one knocks, and the rats stay in the walls where they belong. You flee, maybe you close your eyes, and hold on to the ribbon just in case. It starts with a touch, not yours. Here's a hand resting on yours a moment longer than it needs to. Not a groan, not a demand, just stillness warm, a little damp from nerves, and filled with hesitancy, you look off. He'd older, but not old, clean-shaven, nervous eyes. You know this tie. He's new to the IT, but he new to you. You smile softly because sometimes affection is part of the word, and sometimes it is something else entirely. This one a name is Jews, or says it is PH. He visits once a week, a meal, a drink, a few minutes of quiet before he leans in and rests his head on your show. He doesn't speak much, but he lets you talk not about clients, not about corsets, not about coin. You talk about the Wayne, the cats that live in the alley behind your flat, the strange dreams you've had lately. Young about flying, one about bread that never ends. He laughs at thou, a real laugh, not polite, not perfume, you like it, even if you pretend you don't. Not and then one day he brings flowers, not the cheap kind from the corner store. You stare at them longer than you mean to. He doesn't ask to come upstairs, just gives you the bouquet, says Burr, I thought of you, and disappears into the crowd. You stand there for a long time, smelling lilies, feeling fully, stomachy Asian, with dangerous. You've seen it before, girls who fall for clients, girls who start believing in the story fact. Maybe, just maybe, one of these men means it. You remember, so she was radiant once, had a regular from Marseille who called her his yay wall. I promised to take her away, and one day he did her. Quietly wearing the same dress she left in, wouldn't say. What have just said she was Thai, who never asked to get hair. Historians have long debated whether genuine emotional relationships were possible between prostitutes and their clients. In 19th century Paris, some say yay, call, some say never. You and you say, may some I, some tay, you, if the air is soft and the world forgets its ruse, but mostly, no, because affection is a liability when rent is due and your stomach growls. Still you keep the Liz press, one between the pages of an old book you don't read. It dries there, flattens into many weeks pies, Joel Roteau's. Always polite, always quiet, he brings you little things, ains, orange, a comb. Once a book of poets with half the pages you make tea once. Real tea, not the kind you read 3 times. He's the bride, says no one. Made him tea in ye, You don't ask why, you don't ask much, because the less you know, the safer it feels. And yet, there are moments you catch yourself waking, checking the window near dark, wondering if he appeareth in. Appear, and that to the line, right there, because as soon as you wait, as soon as you want his hands shake, his coat is stained, he wants it paces, entertainments about debt, about family, about a brother, who come back from Algeria, and ruined every unop lay in Terry Stossen. Because trust is something you trade, not something you key. He reaches for your hand again, but this time you pull away. Gent smile, but small not to nigh. He seems to understand, you both sick high, quiet a gay. He seems to understand you both see, blind just a nod, and you exhale the breath you didn't realize you'd have been hoed the next morning. You find a letter tucked under your door, no name, but you know the hand of it. It is sure just a line. Thank you for seeing me as more than a goat. You sit on your bed for a long time, and then you put it away, not under the pill, not near the lilies, in a drawer close, because while affection can be sweet, it can also sink. You mirth of you smile, still, part of you, smiles, because being seen, really seen, rarely a person, but for a moan you were, and maybe that in an hour, just a moan the rest of the day, unfolds as you waiting in a so. And when you pass the alley that smells like garlic and soap, you glance down it just in case. But Jules, isn't it? Nah, tonight maybe not again that bat. Fine you're still here, maybe not again is still survived. Affection is flee, but endure that you're still survive, and it keeps you standing. Therein a knock at your door, but it not the kind you expect. It is sharp, firmer, not curious or courteous, but of fur. You pause, brush the crumbs from your lap, smooth your skirt, and list. Another knock, more urgent this time. You open it slowly, just wide enough to see the unison police, of course. You force a smile, he doesn't return it, just asks to see your livery, your registration book at your stomach, tighten it in. Only by a few days, but it won't matter, they don't care about how late. He says you'll need to report to the dispensary tomorrow for inspay. You nod, say of course, monsieur, and close the door slow. Only then do you sit hard. You dement you sit whole. You dement go lol. The doctor was in a mood, and you did have the 2 francs for the examination. And if you're being honest, you could stand the idea of another cold speculum, another gloved hand, another bored voice telling you to relax. The medical inspections are supposed to protect the public, not you, certainly not you. They fast, mechanical, and humiliating. You lie on a table that smells like bleach, and something worse, under the bored eye of a man who doesn't bother to meet your gaze. They prod, mark something in your thigh. Then you're allowed to leave, as if you passed a test no one should have to take. You go because you have to, because if you don't, you're clandestine, unregistered, unofficial, and at the mercy of any patrol that catches you. And if they do, you're fined or jail or sent to St. Lazare, the women in prison turned hospital, turned whatever they needed it to be. You more heard the stories. Some girls never come back, or if they do, they different, not just thin, hollowed. As if something essential was scraped away during the stay, historians still argue whether the inspections were a form of public health or a tool of contrice. The next morning is wet and grey. You walk inside. The city is half asleep, steam rising from drains like breath from a fevered mouth. You arrive early, thinking it might help it. Does not there are already 20 women in light, most don't be, a few smoked. One sings quietly to herself. The woman behind the desk does not look up when you hand her your book. She just stamps it and points. You follow the corridor to a room that always feels colder than inside. A doctor in spectacles who doesn't smile. He jests you. You climb up. Lift your skirt. Lie bass. The exam is quick climmel. He mumbles something about inflammane. Hands you a paper with scribbled instructions. Tells you to come back in 3 days. You nod not because you understand, but because you're trained to nod on the way out. You pass my ray. She does not see you. She's staring at the floor like it might swallow her. There is a kind of dignity in pretending not to see someone here. You step back into the stream, raining coming again. You pull your shawl tighter and walk your knees, ache your heart pals. But you keep moving because the drop part you do, because the world wants not for your discome. You get home. Light a can, brew weak tea. and try not to think about the disease. Everyone knows someone who got sick there. The visible kind rushes sores, fevered skin, that peels like bark, and the invisible kind, the one that hides in blood and bones and doesn't show until your hands start trembling. You once knew a girl named Helong Lene, bright smile, hair like ing. She caught something, didn't say what, just started losing weight, then cover, then weigh. She began repeating her so, crying in the middle of sense one day. She van repeating her sense. Madame said she had been beta. Some say she went to Salpêtrière, others say the wrist to Salpêtrière. Others say the re you still wonder, you also wonder, how much mercury you've swallowed in the name of hell. Some brothels swear by it. Mercury pays the blood. Protect against female troubles. Instead, it rots your teeth. Thins your hair, makes your hand shake, but the madames keep using it because clients like healthy girths or the illusion of them there. Also moss boiled in white, supposed to cure everything from headaches to heartbreak. De tried it, one tasted like swamp and dissipar, didn't help but it gave you something to do for an hour. And sometimes, that and all medicine, really is distrying. You scratch your ankle absent, another eye, maybe laundry so, maybe nerve ray, maybe something word you palman, because arson costs more, pow, not when the only treatment is rest. Still you survived, that your talent not charm, not seduct, survive. Every day you wake up is prove. Every night you climb the stairs, without falling apart. As a small rebelly, you light another candy. Watch the flame flare, then reach for your mirror. The newspapers never write your name, they write about women like you. Always plural, always distfils, publics, debauchee, women of loose moral. The phrases roll off the page like dust, carefully avoiding the truth of who you are. Today headline, says a courtesan flung herself into the Seine. They don't say her name, just that she was tired of the profrut tide, as if that explains every as if. Despair is just another line. Item in the job, disgust another line item in the job. Disgusted a paper and shove it under the mat. You don't need to see it again because you knew her. Her name was Paulie Red Hair. She used to make faces behind clients' backs that made you snort into your wine. She once sang an aria in the kitchen while peeling potatoes and made everyone cry. Even Maddie, she had worked in wheat, had bruises she did talk about, had debts she could repay, and now she'd a heady a cautionary tay, a line in the public record. You sit on the edge of your bed and wrap your shawl, tie. You'd only cry not because you're strong, but because crying is delayed. It sneaks up later, when your hands are full of soap, or when you're walking home alone under a sky that looks too clean to belong to this sea. Too many girls have vanished late. Some moved on. Some were moved out, some, like Pauline, just slipped through the crack. The madam does mention her, not once, just goes on assigning rooms and polishing the ledger with her ink-stained fingers. Business continued. You're paired tonight with a client who doesn't want company, at least, not that kind of company. He wants to talk that. What? He wants to talk that. Winehole. He says he and Ricey. You doubt it. They all say they something dramata. Rice of this one says he researching a book. He wants to know what life is really like for women. Like you. You almost laugh. Not because it's funny, because he thinks you could tell him the truth. You dumb, you give him the polished, clever, slightly tragic girl who looks good in gaslight and says things like, but we do what we must. He writes it all down. Says you're brilliant. You smile, but inside, you're tired. Because you've learned that people don't want the true, they want stories that fit what they already believed. Or said, but not understood. Never the writer leaves a coin larger than usual. Says he'd be back, you nod you on, don't be here, not tomorrow, not the next day. You make sure of it because men who collect stories often forget that you are not the store. Because men who collect stories often forget that you are not the store. You place a damp cloth on her forehead and hum something wordless. She looks at you, her eyes. She looks at you, her eyes are glassy. I don't want to be forgot. She say you squeeze her ham. You won't be, but she would be, but she would know it. You stay with her until she sleeve. But about all of it, about the scandals, the girls who took poison and live, the girls who took clients' names and ruined fan clients, the secret praises, the backroom abhors, The rich men who pay for silence, not sec. They're always a store and always a cover-up because Paris runs on porn. Below, the secrets pile up like forgotten lawny, and in the middle women like you treading water, floating between shame and savane. Some nights you dream of escape, not a grand one, just a train, a seaside towel, a job folding linens, in a place that smells like salt instead of smoke, but then morning comes, and with it, the bliss, the need. You don't run not yet because part of you still believes there is value in stay, not hope exactly, but stubborn this station. You are not a cautionary tale, you are a woman with a cough that isn't getting better, with a friend who might not make it through the wheat, with 5 francs in a drawer and a pair of gloves that don't fit quite right, and tonight you go back to work because what else is there, because the room must be paid for, because someone might need you, because Pauline won't be coming back, and someone has to remember her. You Dumont has to remember her. You do de cans mot to see you. You light a candle. You lace your boot. The room smells like turpentine and tobacco. You wrinkle your nose but say nothing. You're here because Henry asked you to be Henry. The pain Henry, the odd one. The one who never touches, never kisses, never removes his gloves, and yet stares like he memorizing the shadows on your collarbone. You sit very still. Back straight, one arm draped over the side of a velvet chair he bought second-hand from a bankrupt aristocrat. He told you that like it was a compliment you let your eyes drift over the walls. They're covered in canvases most unfend, some of dancers whose legs blur at the edge. And many, too many of women who look like you, not exactly you, but close enough to raise the hair on your arms. Same posture, same tilt of the chin, same bruises faintly painted over with strokes of gold. Henry moves around you now, murmuring things to himself about the way your shoulder parry a story without asking permission. You not sure what that mean, but you stay still because he paying you not for says, not for conversy, just to see, to exist, to let him turn your body into car. It is strange, this form of whir. It feels more intimate than the others, more phoneable, because here, there, in no illusion, he doesn't want the painted smile or the sweet force. He wants the parts of you most men pretend not to see, the crooked toe, the scar on your rib from falling out of a tree at aid, the way your left eyelid twitches when you're tie he paints it all, and then some. You once caught a glimpse of a finished piece you barely recognized you'll see. The woman in the painting looked soleil, while tired in a regal sort of way, as if she'd ruled an empire of Sikh. You liked that for a mo, but then you saw the signature. He's not yours, and you remembered this wasn't yours to keep. None of it is. Still, these artist types get different from your usual clients, not befriend, just dist. Some pay in coin, some in foo. One once gave you a coat lined with squirrel fur that made you sneeze for a wee. But they all want the same thing, musenna, that ache behind your eyes. They want to consume it, then paint it, then hang it in a salon for people who drink wine and say things like, but she honk. You are, but not in the way they think. Henry offers you a break. You stretch your neck. Roll your show. He brings you tea. You sip. Slowed outside the light shears. The sun is falling into its golden hour. Henry adjusts the drapes, muttering about warmth and long fingers. She watches hands' long fingers stained with pin. You wonder what they would feel like against your skin, but only for a set, then the moment pass. Because that, he scares the silence, between you is not aught, it'd earn you feel like a ghost being remat, and maybe that, watch you eye a flicker of a person captured in oil and canvas, long after the real you is gone. Historians still debate whether the courtesans and street women of 19th century Paris found empowerment. You think? Both, you think. It depends who holding the breath. You ask Henry once if he ever been in love. He does Tronry, just looks at you like you've asked the wrong quester. You don't ask a gay. Eventually, you finty. He gives you the agreed upon sum, and a paper wrapped pass. Bread, cheese, a small tin of fig jam. You thank him. He touches your elbow as you leave, just one, then turns back to his can. Outside, the air is crit. The city smells like roasted chestnuts and damp leaves. You walk toward the risp. Not queen wooden bookstalls, full of poems, dusty maps, and etchings of women, whose you wonder if someday someone will buy a Henriette painting of you and hang it in a drawing room. Will they know your name? Will they care? Will they imagine who you were? Or just marvel at the way your hips curve under the linen you pause at the Seine? The water glints like coins dropped from hair you breathe in long and slow. You feel seen in a different way, not as a bod, not as a tramdy, but as a shape of many, a brief beauty, a woman, not just a were, and then at ye gone the moat you turn back. Head home back to Marie Cough, to the cracked bowl on your windowsill that holds buttons and broken earrings. And tomorrow you'd visit another pain, or a Polay, or a man who wants you to dress like Joan of Arc and sing songs in falsetto. You ought to say yes, because that's the job, because your face is curry. But tonight, for one quiet hour, you are art, and even if no one remembers your name, you will. You are lighting a candle when the knock comes again. Only this time, it's not the nervous knock of a first-time client, or the impatient rattle of your neighbouring broom hand. It's a heavy arrhythmic authority. You blow out the candle instinctive, step toward the door, heart already race you. Instead, you listen voices outside, a manny voice clipped, and a fit in another, rower, louder, almost you don't need to hear the words. You already know, pulley you cuppiet lavrade, you already know, pulley you clutch it like a shield as you open the door. They don't smice it, they rarely do. One steps forward and asks if you've been working outside the registered. May, sir, your stomach flips. You hadn't, at least not this week. You say no, calmly, firmly. Well, pines, they ask if you've been taking clients. At home, you lie. No, monsieur. A neighbour probably, or someone who saw you laughing with a man on the steps and decided you needed punny. They ask to come inside, you has to come inside. You hesty, but you know what happens if you refuse. So you step aside. They look around, not for clues, just for reasons to write something down the bay. The single pair of shoes tucked under the chair. They find nothing ali, but that doesn't matter. The man with the rough voice. But that does not matter. The man with the rough voice leans close, says something crude, under his breath. You don't respond. You never do. They leave a few minutes late. So you be why. You close the door slow, then lock it, then sit and let your hand shake, because it is not just the knock, it's the power behind it. The reminder that everything you have, your room, your work, your very presence, is condemned on staying invisible, on staying invisible and staying invisible, on staying invisible and staying invisible, on staying in V, even when you follow the rules. You always one complaint away from Rue. You've seen it happen to Delphine Sweet, Delphine with the soft voice and the perfect handy. She had a regular powerful one, some ministry clerk with pale hands and a weak chi. He promised her satyr. Then one night he hit her. They find her, said she was causing a disturb. She lost her spot at the Maison the next day. Now she works the outskirt, not for long, you think. Not in with the law does not care. The law only sees disret, not survey. Neither, you say. It was about control, because if they contain you, they can at least contain you. Put you in a lay to contain you. Put you in a lay. Mark your moose. Punish your independ there. A woman, you know, Anne-eyed, Quinn tried to challenge it. Wild Pace studied laws, said the system was uncongiophile pay. Held meetings. In cafes she lasted 3 months before the police shut her down. Now she teaches reading to children. In Montreal, quietly, no one mentions her past, not to her face. But you hear the wisher. You admire her, but you're not her. You don't have the energy for a war you did out. You just want a quiet life, a warm room enough. Francs to buy meat once a week, and maybe a window that doesn't rattle every time someone walks by. You check your liverat again, still stamda, how long you keep here, be how long you be allowed to work before someone decides you're. They never say what that means. Too old, too tired, too lay. You watch girls get removed from Masons. For all three, no warn. Just but you're not what we need anymore. And then they back on the streets, selling what left of their dignity for warm you rise. It and the only sound you like at night, you sit by the window watching the street. A man walks by in a top hat too big for his head. A woman follows, yelling something in patois. A cat darts across the stones, tail twitching like a ribbon in the wind. You breathe slowly. You are still here, still upright, still in possession of your name. That counts for something. You sip your tea at wheat. It wheat almost flavourless, but hot and reese flavourless. But hocker and rear to more will ye be stopped again. Will you be ward and never do that part of the fear? Part of the design? But you have your livery, you have your bobby, you have your stubborn will to keep going, even when everything tells you not to, and if they come again you open the door. You'll smile at because the law may not love you. Just its apps, just enough silence to keep bree, just enough space to be left alone, just enough luck to get through the wee, and enough luck to get through the weeby. Not way. The dream comes again, you're walking through a garden barefoot, the grass cool under your feet, there are roses, fat, heavy-headed ones that nod as you pass, and a breeze that smells like honey and rain. You are not hurry, no one is watty, no one is way. You are just Warner, just be on. And then the sound of foots, not yours. The hey faster, and you wake up, your pillow is damp, the window rattle, it's just the wind, still you lie there for a moment staring. Into the dark trying to pull the dream back toward you, but it gone like mosting, you rough so worn at all. Then dress, methody, bodic stockings, shoes that pinch you comb your hair and wonder, not for the first time, how much longer, you do this not tonight, but this lie the psyche, the pretend, the pleady, this city asks so much of you, and gives so little back, still you go little, you always go. Because there ain't rent, there ain't food, there ain't my ray, who coughing again and needs more brov, because stopping is not freedom. The table near the window where the sunlight paints long lines on the floor, you order a coffee. It's a terry but war, you look out at the street and see people moving like water. All direction, no destiny, and then a man, not a Klein, not yet, but what? Handsome in a weary kind of way. He approaches slowly, pork fat. Asks if the seat to you nod toward it. He says you told his name is Ma. He had a school teacher. He says, in from Dijon, here for Bissy. He doesn't day what kind, doesn't Massey. And when he asks if he can see you again, not tonight, but again you feel something you haven't felt in months warmth. Not humther, not despair, but the fragile hope of prostitute. You meet again, and again, sometimes in Poven, sometimes in your room, always with gentle. Never record your hours like so many do. He brings you bus, plays chess with you, tells you about his students, his favorite bread, how he hates wearing neckties but does it any, and slowly, against your better judgment, you begin to imagine what if he what if he stave, not with him, but for you let yourself dream, not of rids, not of fame, just of quine machine, of owning a sewing machine, of renting a shop with a window and a bell over the door. You start putting aside coal rye, not May, but enough to make a draw rye. Then coughs so hard she nearly falls out of bed. You give her war wipe her brow, and wonder if she ever dreamed of something else. Then one day Mark is laid, then late then gone day, no fair just gol. You visit the post office, ask if he left May. The man behind the desk says Nam, behind the desk says no. He says sorry, but he lie. You can hear it in his voice. Mark is gone, then you don't know why. You never will, because this life does know you aren't. At least for a while, because hope is expent, and you've spent too my real ask you if you're right. Too much say you find that you if you're right. You nod say you find that you, what you always say, but something shibby something inside you has curled inward like a closing flavor. You perform the version of yourself that no longer believes in excess. Historians have written that many women in your profession attempted to leave the trade, often without success. You read that one you tore the page out and used it to line your drawer because it's true. The leaving is harder than the stay. The leaving is risk and quy, and almost never rewarded, but not all sometimes. You hear stories of girls who made it out, who married kind mare, who bought flower stalls or milliner shawls and milliner shawls. You never meet them, but you hear of them. Like Leshen, faint hope dressed in veil tonight, you pass a bakery and catch the scent of warm cried. Not because you're hungry, but because it reminds you of home. Not a real plains you of home. Not a real place, just an ite, the sound of your mother wards to weight of arm. Around you without expente you keep war toe. You don't cry, but your throat tightened because you are still hume, still dreaming somewhere. Even if it's quieter now you reach your door. Open if it's quieter now you reach your door. Open it, light a can. Sis D and Bree want, and to mot you begin again, not because you want to, because some part of you is still looking for a way out, even if you no longer believe it. And maybe, just maybe, that's what survival looks like. The first signs are small, your knees creak. When you rise from bed, your corset pinches in places it did before, and your eyes, they slower now, still sharp but soft at the ears. The girls do not call you old, not yet, but they started calling you madam by accident, and they apologize for you pretend to lie, but something inside folds in on its sips under the door, settles into your bones, rewrites the way men look at you once. You were the flame now. You're the shadow it casts, and shadows then don't get chosen first or set some nights. Not at all, you still work, of course you do. You know how to make men feel like kings with nothing more than a sigh and the flick of your eyes. But they don't disgrace you like before. Now they glance past you or ask if your able younger sister is around. You don't not have one, you never did. You used to walk the room with confidence now. You measure your step, let the newer girls go first. You watch them glows go, watch them laugh too loud, watch them make the same mistakes. You made with all the faith in the world that they won't fall the same way. No one ever does. And anyway, it's not your place. You're not a madar. You never climbed that ladder, never owned a maze, never opened a brothel on the edge of town. With velvet drapes and your name on the front door, you stayed here on the middle floor of a building that groans in the winter. The paint is pea, the window sticks, but it's yours in the way that rented things are. Until they're not, you don't make enough to retire. No one does not, you don't. Don't make enough to retire. No one does. No soft luncheon for women like you. No sailor, more soft land, just slow and I. Sometimes because you're tired. Sometimes because there's nothing else to wake, for the girls knock less off. My reel moved in with her sister in the confide. She sent a postcard once, pressed lavender between the pays. You keep it on the table, but you sniff it every now and then just to feel something gentle. You still have Klein, a few older one, widowers men, who've seen too much and ask for 2 li. One brings you apples every week, and as for 2 li, one brings you apples, and means it that there kindness in their sire. They don't ask quests, and maybe that enough. Your reflection has changed. The skin beneath your chin is salt. The lines at your mouth are deep, but your eyes at your mouth are D, still define, still carrying the weight of too many nights, too many names, too many little moments. You never had time to agree. You touch your chi, the skin is cool. You smile at the mirror, just to see if it still fits. It does. You move slow and aval, that true, but you also speak softer. Mina, some chew, charm chaff. You don't entertain fools anymore. Then a chase tips from men who reek of desperation and wine. You more learned when to walk away, when to say no that, even if it does make the rend. You've begun to write things down, little things, snippets of 9. Names you've loved long, lies you've told the way a man hands. Shook before he kissed your palm, the way the stars looked the night you almost left Paris. But did not, you don't know why you write them. But they feel real when they on the page. Sob like proof that you live because you did more than most. You did more than most you love. Even when it was most mirth, you forgave even when it was most you in the end. Just stubbornness. You sit by the window, same chair, same chipped mo, and you watch the sky, and you watch the sky, doffing, rising with the slow dignity of candlelight. You don't cry, Anita. Someone once told you that women like you van distity leave no mar. But here you are, still here you are, still here, still you. And if that not a legacy, what is the candle flickers, like a sigh waiting to be exhaled. Outside, Paris continues to hum, soft wheels over cobblestones, laughter from the next street, a faint clatter of hooves somewhere in the die. But here, in this small room where the wallpaper peels and your shoes rest neatly by the bed, everything's slow. You lean back in your chair, your bones ache. Yes, but they're yours. And they carried you through every hour, every night, every whispered moment that others chose to forget. The city never stopped for you, but you did stop for it. You were dad stopped for it Eton. And even when the world pretended not to see you, you remained. Now the light is low. The stories are quiet. You don't need to remember all the names. Not tonight, just the feeling of having leave, of having Matt. Just the feeling of having leave, of having Matt, of having been real. In a world that tried to paint you into fee. Let your hands red. Let your thoughts dread. The tea is still warm beside you, the candle warm. And in the hush of this hour, you are say, you are held, you are still you now. Close your eye, you sink into the softness of the dark and let the world blur the airs. There are nothing more to do, just raid, just briquet,